Canada, the Caribbean, the United States, Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world, engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95.
Good evening, a very, very good evening to you in Radio Land and on the internet at home and abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A very, very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, 12th November 2024, the 44th Tuesday of 2024, and it's 8 p.m. in the studios at Q95, the big station. We're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio, share the live, like our pages. The on-air numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. So we continue to revive the spirit of graciousness and love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. It is our 20th or 35th Global View on Q show for 2024, and we continue to engage with our cherished local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica. Our distinguished guest tonight, I'm pleased to tell you, are Justice Dr. Irving Andre, who probably may pop in and out as we go along this evening, engineer, dynamic young leader, and generational wealth advocate, Delbert Paris is with us, and so is outspoken businessman and pharmacist Andy Jolly, who may pop in for a while and, with us as well this evening. And of course, our very, very popular, well-known social scientist, Simeon Joseph, is here with us tonight. It's all about our independence, our controversial elections, our elusive socio-economic autonomy and progress after 46 years of independence. So the question is, and there's really two questions I'm putting before our panel and our audience tonight. Are we better off in 2024 than we were in 2000 or even before independence? Were we better off under Frank A. Barron or on Edward Oliver Liebler or under Patrick Roland John or under Oliver J. Serafin or under Mary Eugenia Charles or under Edison Chenfield James? I'm pretty sure Dr. Andre will tell us something about that. If that was the case, then we must do something about this. So where do we go from here in terms of our economic independence, fair elections, freedom, autonomy, youth self-actualization? We see very little of that these days, particularly after 25 years under the present Dominica Labour Party regime, which took over the reins of government, you recall, in January of 2000. Have we in fact sidelined the ideal of the sustainable development and self-actualization of our youth? We know where we should be going from here. It is clear that Dominica is going in the wrong direction, that it is severely lacking proper planning, leadership, and progressive economic and social direction. We see evil spirits and Movilang taking center stage at political rallies and in industry. Pastors to the north, pastor to the south, pastor to the east, pastor to the west, politicians in the middle. What's really going on? But look at the progress being made and continuing to be made by our neighbors who have changed their governments from time to time. But are the opposition forces ready and able, or getting organized, or getting ready to win an election, lift up the people, and fix the conspicuously shortcomings that we see all around us? And will the opposition forces be ready? In fact, if there is an election within the next 4 months, and I mentioned that particularly because all the talk that we hear, who knows what's going to happen. So will the opposition be ready to face an election in 4 months if they do decide to contest? And are we better off with our current governance, our education, our national security, and our standing in the world in the wake of fallout from the CBI program and its due diligence failures? We are aware of the politicization of the public service as it relates to institutional capacity, integrity, governance, accountability, and transparency. Some of the examples with the Electoral Commission, the Integrity in Public Office Commission, the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, National Statistics and National Audits. I'm sure that Simeon Joseph will tell us more about all of those. He has some experience in all those areas there, the public service. As free and fair elections fled to brutish beasts, is the dream of generational wealth now being completely destroyed for our youth? Our patriots being seduced with what? A fatted calf? Who is looking after the people's economic interests? Who is speaking for ordinary Dominicans? What has been accomplished for ordinary Dominicans over the past 25 years? Really? Did they get more results? Did they get more results under the previous governments? Will it be left to people's power to get their electoral and campaign finance reforms and free and fair elections on a level playing field in order to secure and sustain Dominica's democracy, restore its middle class, which is vital, and its reputation and credibility in the region, in the regional and global community? My view, somebody's mic is open. It would be good if they could just mute it so the feedback doesn't come through. My view is that the two-party system is better than a one-party state, which is apparently what exists in Dominica for all intents and purposes at the moment. There is no opposition leader. In order to rescue Dominica, all opposition forces, I think, ought to immediately gather under one umbrella political organization led by a dynamic, thoughtful, smart, pragmatic, I'm using a lot of words, knowledgeable, business oriented person, a skilled communicator who's people oriented, articulate, hardworking, success oriented person, great community organization skills, and oriented to technology driven fundraising imperatives. Of course, as I said a little earlier to Matt today, I can find people who easily fit that bill. But if that description sounds a lot or little like Andy Jolly or Delbert Paris or Simeon Joseph, that was not intentional. I'm sure there are others as well. Or will we continue to allow passport peddlers, wheelers, and dealers to betray the trust of the people even further and continue to sell out the future of Dominica's youth? The answer clearly rests in people's power. As Dr. Andre always tells us, sitting on the fence or hiding in the shadows is clearly not working. So my guess, again, Dr. Andre, Delbert Paris, Simeon Joseph, our favorite guy, Andy Jolly, will be with us for a short while. Um, they will share their views on all of these and other related issues. How to restore good, accountable, and transparent governance, return Dominica to the path of economic recovery, democracy, and respect. So the long and short of it is that we need to put a new group of people in government as soon as possible to implement a more progressive people's growth-driven action plan on the way forward for Dominica. So let's get out of business. We invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to help us to give our usual good shout out and hugs and appreciation and big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, our teachers, our doctors, our nurses, and public and private sector patriots from and abroad. Welcome each and every Dominican friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home in Dominica, in the region and globally. Thank you again, Sherwin, for keeping us on. And thank you, Lambi, on the console directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program, and Lambi will certainly take your calls. He will signal us whenever you call. These are a few of my own talking points on the Global Q tonight. My distinguished guests will deliver on their own talking points. I go now just to Justice Irving Andre for his brief opening overview to get the ball rolling on our conversation tonight. Dr. Andre?
Yes, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me to your program. It has a distinguished provenance in Dominica. Many people listen to it, look forward to hearing it. And I thank you for your great contribution to the resuscitation and redemption of Dominica. Let me say good evening to Mr. Paris, Mr. Joseph, Mr. Lambi, Schumann, somewhere in the back, and yourself. It is always good to break bread, so to speak, among persons who dream of a better Dominica. And as it is always the case, Those who offer goodness and dignity and integrity have nothing more to offer than their own examples, their own altruism, their own sense of decency. So that I do not come here this evening offering you, for example, a mansion at, what's the name of the place, Mount Daniel. I come here without being able to offer you the concession to sell passports and pocket most of the money. I do not come here to offer you the chance of building hotels which are never completed. I do not offer you laundered money to buy properties all over Dominica. I am in no position to offer you a fatted calf. All I can offer you, your listeners, Mr. G, quite frankly, is a fatted Tululu crab from Purple Turtle Beach in Portsmouth, and the hope and the dream of working hard to make something of yourselves and for your children. How are we better off today than we were decades ago? First of all, who are you referring to when you make reference to we? Who is the we that you're referring to? Are you referring to those, quite frankly, metaphorically called square pegs in wrong holes? These are not square pegs in wrong holes. These are persons who, quite frankly, is milking the calf, who is getting the cow to be golden, and who is sharing the proceeds of lucre among a small group of persons. And they are much better off. There's no question about that. But what about the vast majority of people? We've talked about this over and over again. The number of industries in Dominica in the 60s and 70s, agro industries, the fine examples of persons who basically became well-to-do by the sweat of thy brow. If you juxtapose that to what obtains today, what do you have? You have people, as I said, being given concessions to build edifices which are not completed. If you look at, for example, the neck of land going to the Cabrits, you see a wonderful white monstrosity sinking into the ground. The basement is flooded. It has no hope of being open. If you look at Lubia, you see the same type of situation. If you look at, is it around Salisbury area, the same situation. Hotels stopped inexplicably because the long arms of the law is out waiting to grasp by its neck the evidence of money laundering all over the world. And Dominica is no exception. And you measure progress by the condition of the poorest among you, those who cannot afford to provide for themselves, those who cannot afford to send their children to school, those who cannot afford to repair their roofs. Almost, 7 years after Hurricane Maria, those who quite frankly lost their jobs, those are who deprived promotions in the public sector, those who cannot find jobs in the biggest industrial or construction enterprise in the history of Dominica. I was in Dominica recently, Mr. G, and I saw those trucks carrying these huge, whatever you call it, of concrete, roaring up the road from the port to Marigot, driving in a very cavalier fashion, and I see who disproportionately the drivers are. How do you measure progress? Don't you measure progress by the extent to which you enable your own people to provide for themselves? Don't you measure progress by the extent to which people can establish their own businesses? Don't you measure progress by the extent to which people who work hard and went to school and earned degrees can earn promotion in the civil service? Don't you measure progress by paying people their dues when you seize their lands? Don't you make sure that they're not begging for what is due to them? How do you measure progress? Do you measure progress by giving foreigners $30 million of compensation, and you pay NEP workers $8 to $10 an hour if you pay them at all? Do you measure progress by witnessing people banging on doors of credit unions because they cannot get paid? Do you measure progress by mocking people who have spent their lives and fortunes building hotels, and you mock them by saying that they cannot afford a tin of paint? Do you measure progress by boasting that foreigners are shipping $220 or $30 or $40 million out of Dominica, where then when Dominicans on the ground cannot even earn a living wage. Is that what progress means to you, my friend? At National Day, you are dressed in gaudy, vulgar outfits. You're wearing expensive shoes. Your cronies are driving in tinted SUVs, building edifices for their, how should I say it? For their concubines, I guess. And those who are most in need are there fending for themselves. Is that what progress means? Is progress the meaning, or does progress mean destroying all those ethics that accounted for Dominica's progress in the 60s and 70s? Of farmers working hard to send their children to the Dominica Grammar School? I know that because I met many of these sons and daughters right there. I met many of them bright, eager, going to school, doing well, getting degrees, providing for themselves. And today they face a tsunami of difficulty because of the philosophy that is embraced by the political directorate. A philosophy based on that golden calf, which cannot be carved up and shared for the poor. It can only be pocketed and serve the interest of a selfish few. And that, unfortunately, is the fate of Dominica as we speak. How can we boast of independence of 46 years? How can we boast about the signs of development? Just this evening, I was speaking to a relative and he was telling me, boy, the number of hotels being built. Is that how you measure progress? The number of hotels being built. By whom? Where are the spin-offs to Dominicans on the ground? What about Dominican workers being employed in these types of edifices or construction projects? What is there to offer Dominicans? Next thing, you'll be giving them a camera so they can take pictures of these false gods. These false gods that litter the landscape of Dominica. They are false gods because they offer no hope. They don't offer any salvation. This evening, I was looking at DNO, flipping through its past pages, and there was one of the biggest passport sellers promising hundreds of jobs for Dominicans while he built an airport, not an airport, a hotel in Picard. You go look at it today, a grotesque building, devoid of any soul, any spirit, devoid of any employment opportunities, a grotesque symbol of the deprivation that has overtaken Dominica. Think of Rosie Douglas. Think of Rosie Douglas. I'm not asking you to think now, because frankly, Rosie Douglas has been on our mind over the last few days. Mr. G, would you break bread with he who has done the most to destroy the legacy of Rosie Douglas? Si Rosie te cousin, is that the person you would be seeking to join hearts and hands? He who has sought assiduously to destroy the legacy of Rosie Douglas. You think Rosie Douglas, Mr. G, would be offering you a golden cow? Well, fatted calf? Somebody will correct me. No. He will offer you opportunities to work, to be employed, to make a contribution in your own community. I know there are persons who work very hard in Dominica, whether in businesses, whether in bakeries, standing in front of this wood oven, 12, 14 hours a day, breaking bread, and he has to do it because that's the way he earns a living. It's unforgiving. It's not even recognized. It's not even applauded by many persons, but you have to do it because without doing it, you face a life of difficulty because there's no help on the horizon. The help is for others, for foreign persons who have no link to Dominica. So we are at a stage in our history where we've never been before, because no other administration has sought to impoverish Dominicans as this one. No other administration has launched such a vicious assault on the values of Dominica. No other Dominicans has robbed Dominicans of employment opportunities to the extent that exists today. No other administration, quite frankly, has shown such a flagrant disregard for the values that has enriched Dominica. So make no mistake about it. We are very much poorer today. And I hope some of our religious leaders will reflect, will think about the positions that they hold, and will have somewhat a come to Jesus moment. And we will say, Father, forgive me, I have sinned. I have supported this blatant evisceration of everything that is good in Dominica. But some of us, we have to be thankful, because there's people like Mr. Paris, there's people like Mr. Joseph, there's yourself, and others who have maintained a solid stance of decency and integrity in light of this relentless attack on everything that is good in Dominica. They have not taken the easy way out. They have not looked for a golden calf. They have faced, and the only armor and shield they've had is their own integrity and their only sense of decency. And that is the hope which will sustain Dominica, quite frankly, through this existential crisis that it faces today. And so I stand, as I said before you, dispossessed, having to nothing to offer you, perhaps in the words of Winston Churchill, my toil and my sweat, and my ability to, quite frankly, see what is right from what is wrong. And as long as there are persons in our midst who stand on those strong pillars, on that solid foundation, as opposed to a house built of sand, as opposed to having expectations of immediate wealth by joining or selling your soul for 30 pieces of silver or $30 million. As long as there are persons who are prepared to stand, there is hope. And that is what sustains me, Mr. GG. There is hope. I thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Andre. And certainly there is hope. But Simeon, I noticed that Dr. Andre, in looking at making the comparisons, different regimes, and looking at asking the question, are we better off? Not telling us emphatically that we're not better off. No. But he did conclude by telling us about this a come to Jesus moment. That's what I thought you might want to add to that. because I thought that was very, very important. Because when I listened to some of the things that were said over the weekend, I'm wondering what is really going on.
So you want me to respond to that?
Oh yes, I want you to respond.
Well, it's amazing that you mentioned both. He mentioned come to Jesus moment, and you also cited that. But you see, in Greek theology, there is a word that speaks to that. It's called metanoia. Okay, and it's more than just realizing wrong, but it implicitly involves turning around, having a good examination of conscience, and having a good examination of conscience, and actually being able to know what one has to do to turn things around. Now we have been on, how you put it, we just celebrated our 47th anniversary of independence. Okay, we just celebrated our 47th anniversary of independence. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, where are we as a people after 47 years of governance, after 40 years of independence? And most particularly, especially due to the fact that out of those 40, 47 years of independence, we have been ruled by a government, one government, that has managed this country for, you could say, 24 years of those 47 years. So half of our, you could say, our lifetime as a so-called quote-unquote independent country, we have been ruled by one government. Now, allow me this afternoon to look at Mr. Gregoire when we talk about governance, and maybe others will deal with it. But when a country is independent, if a country is independent, it means, therefore, when a country gains independence, you have to be ruled by a government that is going to guarantee progress and development. And for the purpose of our own edification, I chose tonight to zero in on an understanding of what is good governance and how we in Dominica have been deprived of good governance. Because it is in governance, through governance, that a nation prospers. And so allow me to see if I can survey governance in terms of what governance ought to be, and the kind of governance we've had in Dominica over the past 47 years, and specifically over the past 24 years. Now, essentially, they tell you in politics and governance that good governance, right, involves three P's, right? People, purpose, and a process of performance. That is what you would think of when you speak of good governance. Okay, and so you have to ask yourself, when you assume the role of governance, and you have to ask yourself, to what extent are you, the government, working on behalf of the people? Okay, what is your purpose? How do you understand your purpose as a government, and what processes do you put in place that would allow you to perform in such a way on the benefit of the people? And so these are three questions we have to ask ourselves. Now, as we continue to look at that, one of the things we have to focus on as we think about governance is what is the character of governance? What is the character of the government that we have? How competent has been the government in executing governance, and how has the government communicated its ideas, its policies, etc. to people? And then you would have to further ask yourself, to what extent has there been the right type of accountability, okay, when it comes to governance? How fair has been the government? How transparent has been the government? And to what extent has the government been able to allow a certain level of independence to prevail? Okay, because that's why you have governance. Okay, and then that would inherently imply that if you want to govern people properly, you have to have full disclosure. This is something Dominica has been deprived of. You have to have a certain level of transparency, okay? And then you have to have a certain high degree of accountability so that the people whom you govern can feel secure, okay? And so good governance will therefore involve all the processes of governing, the institutions, the processes, and the practices through which issues of common concern are decided upon and regulated on and for and on behalf of the people. So the manner in which power is exercised in the management of a country's economic and social resources for development is very important. Okay, and these are things that, because at the end of the day, everything that you do will focus on how have you advanced the life of the people whom you serve. Okay? How have the people been able to find a purpose for their existence, right? For their national identity, for their development, okay? And what have you done? What have you put in place in terms of the processes, okay? That would underpin the performance upon which you as the government has been able to help people. So at the end of the day, you would have built capacity, okay? You would have been able to have a certain level of convergence on all the different elements of a country that where production would come from, and you would have a sort of complementarity between all the aspects of government, the business sector, the cultural sector, the sporting sector, the youth, agricultural sector, and how those things are things. So I'm not sure if I'm making any sense in asking us as a people, are we better off today? Have we had that level of governance? Okay, whereby these procedures have been utilized by the representatives of the people, okay, who are the stakeholders, so that they have been able to provide for the people of Dominica the level of purpose, okay, understanding their roles as a citizenship, or as a citizenry, allowing Dominica to construct itself with a certain tone of development, okay, and where the right people have been involved to ensure that Dominica reaches where it wants, where it has to reach, and to what extent have there been that level of accountability which is necessary for good governance, the level of transparency that is required so that people understand where they are going and where you want to take them, a level of fairness whereby everybody understands that they play an equal and pivotal role without any exclusion, but everybody is involved in a very high degree of fairness for the development of the country, where people take up collective responsibility, that it is devolving the people and their representatives so that they can take that necessary risk in each other and claiming, or you could say owning, so to speak, where they want to go. So I think to be honest with you, after saying all of that, we have to ask ourselves, to what extent has the government that we have in power today possessed that level of character that they can be called a government? To what extent do they have that? Have they been able to display that level of competence so that people can have faith in them, and not only them, but in themselves and their future? And that is a very pivotal question we have to ask today. Are the people of Dominica, do they feel competent enough? Do they have confidence in the competence of the government and even with themselves to be able to take themselves beyond where they want to go? And how is that communicated? By what we produce, by what we do, by how we interact with each other, by what messages we send, okay, that the general population can get buy-in into what you want to do. What are Dominicans communicating today? To themselves, to others? What is the government communicating to Dominicans today or to the wider world that gives Dominicans that sense of confidence that they feel competent so that they can have their destiny in their hands and they know where they are going? When you look at Dominica after 47 years of independence compared to Jamaica, when Jamaica was just 20, 30 years of independence, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Antigua became independent after Dominica, right? Well, Grenada was 1973. But all these other countries, St. Kitts became independent Dominica. And it means, therefore, that the type of governance that they had was able to usher them into a level of confidence whereby they felt competent to take ownership for their own development. Can Dominicans say that we are at that stage today? Can we say that we are composite enough, okay, that we feel confident that Dominica is where it has to be after 20 years of this current government in power. And so the question is, are we better off in terms of governance now than we were 20 years ago? Are we better off? Are the models of governance, are they solid enough? Okay, especially the three pillars of governance: the administrative, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. Are Dominicans really confident in the executive of the land? Do they have any confidence in the judiciary and the legislative system and the security and safety? Okay, and are Dominicans really confident in the fact that we have a government that is going to take us into solidly, productively, satisfactorily, and with a certain level of confidence into the next 25 years, or even as we celebrate 50 years? I put it tonight in ending my opening presentation that Dominicans today, after 47 years of independence, after 24 years of this Labour Party, that Dominicans need to start sending a very solid message to this current regime that it is time for them to go. They have squandered the opportunity of good governance. They have wasted the confidence of the people. They have decimated any competence that we can have in the governmental system. And they need to have a mea culpa moment. You began by talking about what you call so we started with metanoia. Metanoia, as I began by saying, has to be a complete admission of wrong, of coming to senses and going back, like the story of the prodigal son, okay, who recognized that he had left the confidence and the security of his father's home, and he had squandered everything, and he reached in the stage where he was in the pigsty, almost wanting to eat from the feed of the pigs. He had to come to his senses and say, how many of my father's children, servants, are eating better than me? So I must turn around and go back. And that's where Dominica has to be now. We have reached the stage where we're almost in the pigsty, about to eat of the food of the servants, where we have sort of lost all the riches that we have in our own kingdom, where we have sort of walked away from everything that rightly belongs to us, where we have turned our backs and moved away from what you could say symbolic or the father's house, safety, security, right? A full table at our disposal and everything. And we have squandered it, we have wasted it to the extent that we can say we are almost at the level of a pigsty, okay, where we now have to grovel to make ends meet. And so maybe the time has to be where we have that mea culpa moment. We turn around and go back. And that is where, and I don't think this government has the capacity to experience any metanoia or mea culpa moment, because they are so ignorant, they are so narcissistic, they are so egoistical, they are so selfish, they are so myopic, okay? People who are hard at heart do not have mea culpa moments. People who are stubborn and self-centered do not experience metanoia. And I think the best thing that can happen to this government and for Dominica now is for these people to walk away, step aside, right? Abandon the leadership of this country and the governance of this country, and give Dominicans the opportunity to live once again in the kingdom that has been prepared for them by their Father above. That's my opening statements.
And thank you for that. Thank you so much for that, Simeon. Very, very well said. Well, Delbert, you're the young, dynamic. All the other names they're calling you, all kinds of names. What's going on? Because we talked about a come to Jesus moment. you know, and we still on that because I mean, people introducing all kind of devilish things into the conversation. It's time to get that out of there. But then, secondly, you know, Simeon mentioned about the convergence of all those various factors in there. I mean, at the macro level, at the micro level, in various sectors, whether you look at the governance, the transparency, the accountability. But then, what do they do? Do you get the infrastructure that's going to facilitate the manufacturing and the production and so on? And then, of course, one of the things that Simeon said that I really would like you to, and I know that you will reflect on that in some of your comments, that he says that it seems as if the riches of the nation are eluding its children. You know, as we saw a couple of years ago, a year ago, 200 and something million dollars just leaving the country and going via foreign corporations and foreign workers. And we didn't seem to have any problem with that. We were boasting that 200 and something million dollars left the country while our children in NEP and our children working in public service are getting 0 and 1% increase. Your comments on that, and of course you can add whatever you need to add in terms of the areas that I know that your favorite areas you want to talk about, especially I know you like talking about the youth.
Of course. Mr. G, good evening. And Mr. G, I must tell you that I appreciate the faith that you seem to have in me, because you set it up so that I speak after Dr. Andre and after Simeon. You have ensured that you set the bar extremely high. So I take it as a vote of confidence.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Having me back on Global View. I like being here. It's always a good conversation when we get together and air out some of these issues. There's so much to talk about. And I really like the areas that we're focusing tonight, because it speaks to a people's identity. We just celebrated, and correct me if I'm wrong, I heard Simeon mention 47, but I thought it was 46. Doesn't make much of a big difference. But regardless of that fact, half of that time has been ruled, a little over half of the time you've been ruled by one government. And the idea, the question is, how has that been? 24 years, we push in on 25 in January. How Silver Jubilee, I think they call that, Mr.
Yep. Yes, it's Silver Jubilee.
Silver Jubilee. Usually at a Silver Jubilee, people have a celebration of an accomplishment. They have gone, they have some skin in the game, and they have put down roots, and they have something to show for it. Children who were born in 2000 are now 25 years old. And these are adults who are starting to have their families. And Simeon mentioned something earlier on. Have you advanced the life of the people that you serve? Have you been able to allow your people, the people that you govern, to be able to chart their own course with dignity and with pride? Something that independent nations usually like to uphold and to boast, that we are able to self-govern and we are able to express our own personal autonomy as a sovereign nation. Has our governance in the last 25 years been able to give us that pride and that personal autonomy, that self-actualization that everybody seeks for? With the resources that we have, with the capacity that we have we been able to express it? And that's the question. Coming up on our Silver Jubilee, our same little Dominica that has in the past been able to feed nations. We have produced in the past so many remarkable products and built formidable industries. It was so interesting. Somebody sent me a clip. Someone was saying that the reason it's difficult to have factories in Dominica is because of the cost of our electricity. Mr. G, but we've had factories before. We've had factories before. We've built them. And we can go down the list of factories that transformed this nation before. 25 years after your rule, the reason why you are justifying to the international world that we don't have factories in Dominica is because our electricity bill is just too high. We can't afford it. It's becoming embarrassing, Mr. G, the kind of excuses that our leaders are putting forward to justify the failure that they have meted out on Dominicans for the last 20, 25 years. The same Dominica that produced scores of brilliant individuals, across the world who have been forerunners and pioneers and leaders in their field, both inside and outside of Dominica. I mean, we can go down the list, whether it's in politics, whether it's in religion, in culture, in sports, in education, in industry. Dominica has always been at the top of their game globally in the kind of people that we produced and we sent out into the world. People who left and built a life for themselves and came back. Are we still doing that today? I don't think it's because we have a shortage of intelligent people, but access is becoming a serious problem. Our same little Dominica that used to be first in many things around the region. You just heard Simeon mention a while ago that we were one of the first countries in the region to gain our own independence, to decide that we wanted to govern ourselves, to decide that we had what it took to chart our own future and to do it with pride and dignity. But what has that come at the cost of? We used to live in a Dominica where we could trust our neighbors, Mr. G. We could have open discussions about social and political and religious issues and not fear for our life or our livelihood. You know, somebody wouldn't be recording us and sending it to a leader of government or some kind of minister to, you know, make sure that, you know, you pass that house straight at Christmas time when you come with the truck and the paper bags. Simply because people had an opinion on how we could be doing things better. That's not the Dominica that I heard about, and that's not the Dominica that I experienced, but that's the Dominica that we live in today. In Dominica, when I heard my grandparents and my parents speak about the way that we lived and the kind of culture, not just our independent culture, but the culture, our modus operandi, the way that we lived. We lived as if Dominica was good enough. That your birthright as a Dominican actually meant something, and you could have a future here, and that the future that you would have in Dominica would be good enough. Dominica used to be a place where young people didn't feel like they had to run away, or that running away was the only option. Dominica was home, and I think by and large everybody knew that regardless of if you wanted to go away, you wanted to experience something different, you wanted to gain capacity, you wanted to see the world, you always knew that Dominica was home, and home is good enough and home is okay, and you would always be okay at home in Dominica. But that was a hope that we used to have, and that the flames of that hope is dwindling. And it's dwindling to the point where people are literally petrified to have Dominica as their only option. People are petrified to feel as if something happened that they couldn't fly out. After 46 years of independence, Mr. G, people are afraid of what the future holds for them and their children in Dominica. Literally afraid. That's the Dominica that we live in today, where senior citizens are scared of going to the hospital because not many of them, they have lived experience where when their friends go there, the senior citizens, when their friends go there, they literally need to prepare for a funeral because it's not likely that their friends are going to come back. But the rest of your citizenry is afraid of your healthcare system because your healthcare system really doesn't have the healthcare part, and the systemic part of it is really in shambles. Yeah, you might have a building there, but there's no system in there. There's no actual healthcare in there. And if you talk about almost 50 years of independence, and I heard Simeon say it on the radio a few years ago, we are almost hundreds of years behind. We are hundreds of years behind. We are pushed back. Pensioners are pensioners in name only, Mr. G. Public servants have absolutely no upward mobility. And in turn, the posture that you see in many of our public servants now is that they are more preoccupied with saving their jobs at any cost rather than providing an efficient service. You hear talk of development and you see a lot of concrete going on, and you hear, you know, so many things are going on. I mean, just look at this past weekend. I felt like it was a fairy tale. But independence wasn't about concrete, you know. Simeon mentioned it early on. It was about people. It was about purpose. and it was about performance. Governance. The governance, you're going to self-govern, and this is the reason why. To make life better for your people. So let's talk about that. What is the position with our truckers? We see a few of them on the road now, God bless their heart. But they're catching their tail. And that's not how it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be a bargain. What is the position of our local contractors? In a time where we are boasting that Dominica is spending so much of Dominica's own money, I hear other prime ministers coming to talk in Dominica to boast how Dominica is having, we're building this international airport, it will be debt-free. But none of them are concerned about the position of our people and the performance of our government as it relates to the upward mobility of our people. Our people are not included. How many of the people in Wesley and Marigot and Woodford Hill or Dominica generally have the level of participation that positions them and their family to invest in themselves going forward? How many of them? I heard the minister talking about, lands that are going to be available. And right after, I heard someone from his actual constituency saying that the land that he's talking about is in a valley. You can't even grow cane there. I can't verify that. But Mr. G, how much of our people are being positioned from the wealth distribution that is happening in our country right now? How many of our people are being positioned to ride that wave? Position themselves and their family. You keep mentioning generational wealth. Where is that in Dominica? How many people now are able to actually retire? They've gotten to the age of retirement and they can actually retire and position themselves and put themselves in a position to help their children to have a start off. And they're not on the bread line, they're not in the begging line, and they're not being forced with high blood pressure and high blood sugar and all kind of non-communicable diseases to force themselves to go back to work just in order for them to survive after they have given a life of service, whether it be in the private or public sector. We live in a country where things we used to do for ourselves with ease back in the day, we find it extremely difficult to do. I'll mention one of them, Mr. G. Every funeral announcement that you hear now is giving praise to some minister, or it's giving thanks to some minister or the prime minister, or the office of the prime minister, to bury a loved one. We have removed the dignity of people after they have worked their entire life and their children are around them. We have to ask for help just to bury a loved one. And we have to pay homage because we have to tell everybody where we got that casket from, because, God knows we couldn't pay for it for ourselves. So, special thanks to Minister XYZ, special thanks to the PM. You've taken people's dignity from them. And they can't do simple things like send off their loved ones in peace. Instead, what you're hearing now, Mr. G, I heard on the weekend as well, you're hearing people glorifying the struggle. You're hearing people glorifying impoverished people, glorifying that situation, because they feel that the more that they have, the more that they can make people poor and make people grovel and and be in the position to give them some crumbs that they can feel good about themselves and pretend that that is some type of governance and it is some kind of performance framework or performance metric that you should be measuring a government by, how many poor people they help. Mr. G, the good book says that the poor will always be with us, but it never said that we must try our best to make every one of us poor. That's not what the good book says. It said the poor will always be with you and you have a duty to take care of them, and that is right and good and just. But it never instructed anyone to try to make everyone poor. That is injustice. That's no kind of way to be looking at independence. We have a situation in Dominica, Mr. D, that is getting worse, and it's in line with the issue of making people poor. I've heard about the situation for a long time, but I had no personal experience. I had no verifiable information, and people's private business, they don't always tell you. But I had the opportunity recently, Mr. G. I was coming down from Marriott, I was heading to town, it was in the evening, and I picked up a gentleman. I picked him up in Concord, in a dead zone. And your cell phones don't even work in that area because the service is bad. But I know him, so I picked it. You know, I was driving, I was alone. I picked him up. I said, "Hey, bro, where you heading to?" He said, "Man, I head into town, you know, XYZ, you know, I said, pretty late here down to town. I think you'll be going in the other direction." He said, "No." I had the opportunity to talk to him and told me about the situation. This is a man that gave 34 years of his life, his youth, his entire youth, to the government service. Because I want to keep it confidential, I wouldn't tell you exactly where. 34 years, his entire youth. He's now retired. It's been 10 months since he retired. Mr. G and the rest of the panelists, that gentleman is the breadwinner in his family and taking care of some members of his extended family as well, has not received $1. Not in gratuity, not in pension, nothing. 10 months ago, he retired. Mr. G, he told me of a number of his colleagues who are in the same situation. And I have heard of scores of people who are in the same situation after giving a life of service, a lifetime of service to the public sector. And they cannot receive what is legally due to them. So they have to forcefully, whether they are sick, whether they have chronic diseases, whether they are tired, whether they are drained, they have to squeeze blood out of stone and get back in the workforce. Not because they have a big house to buy, Mr. G. Not because they have a big piece of land that over there that they want to invest in and so on and so forth. No, Mr. G. They're doing that because they want to survive. That is injustice. That is injustice. That has nothing to do with governance, because that's not how you govern. Meanwhile, Mr. G, while that is happening before your eyes, you are seeing the same administration that complains that it does not have money literally throw money on the ground to keep some bogus groundbreaking, to have some bogus party, to go to some phantom conference where you already had all the positions filled the Thursday before. You go to some conference and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that, while the same people you're talking, they are dying, they are suffering, and it's not because they are begging you. That's what is owed to them. Mr. G, how many local vendors have unpaid checks that cannot be honored, that are sitting at the financial center? What is the value of our unpaid checks? The last time I heard it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't want to give the wrong figure because I stand corrected. Hundreds of millions of dollars of unpaid checks to Dominicans, you know, Mr. G. Dominicans that work for it. They didn't ask for it. They worked. They provided a service, and they cannot get paid. Some of those individuals are truckers. Some of those individuals are contractors. But you know what I heard the leader of government say the other day? He was chastising truckers for having modified trucks. Call them modified. They're not good. They're not roadworthy. But some of these truckers are the same set of truckers that the morning after Maria were on the road. Some of these truckers and heavy equipment operators, they were on the road helping to clear the roads. And they haven't gotten paid, some of them, Mr. G. They are still owed. So how are they going to get new trucks? And then the person that has the power to do something about it spits in your face and tell you, oh, your truck not good enough, get off the road. You're all blocking the road to come and talk about, you want participation. Mr. G, how many teachers have been working? Public servants, people in the Ministry of Agriculture, in the police force, the fire service, working for years, maybe up to decades. I've heard of situations that are longer than almost 20 years. Not getting appointed. So you cannot plan your life. because you're living in anxiety because you're not appointed there, so you can't afford to mess up. That's why public servants are preoccupied with saving their job, because they're not appointed. How many of them? What are the number of vacant positions that are not being filled? What of the monies that our government owes to vendors and statutory institutions? What about them? Simeon outlined all of our governance performance indicators a while ago. And when you go down into the weeds of it, you're seeing that what we have really is a sham. This gang of people who are very incompetent, who does not have the testicular fortitude to say, I don't know what I'm doing and I need help. Or I don't know what I'm doing and I need to get out of the way. What is the cost of our foreign policy? The relationship that we have with our international friends should be one that is mutually beneficial. It should be one where you have a situation where our relationship and our engagement with our foreign partners puts us at a disadvantage. Now, I always caution people, because you hear people talking about a lot of, the Chinese this and the Chinese that, and this people this and that people that. Chinese will give you what you accept. The people that have a responsibility to you is your government. Your government has a responsibility to you. The Chinese will give you what you accept. Chinese are not here just doing what they want. They're doing what they're allowed to do. So if our government decided to put us first, the Chinese would make room. Our government is the one that is at fault. So we cannot afford to be isolationist, and we cannot afford to be insular, and we cannot afford to not engage our people, engage with the foreign market. But also we can't put ourselves in a position where our citizens become second class in their own country. And that's a problem that is part of the problem that we have. Mr. G, there's a piece of I want to go on and talk about the young people. There's a piece that I wrote a few weeks ago.
I want you to come back to talk about that, because I want you to
come back to talk about it. I will. But that's the situation, Mr. G. And these are the real situations that people are dealing with. And when you get away from the smoke and mirrors, you realize that Dominicans and Dominica is really in a bad place.
No, I really want to give you time to come back and talk about the youth, because you will need time to talk about it. That's very important, because we have to see where are we going. What are we going to do about all this thing? We can't just have these problems so we don't do something about it. And because Dr. Andre, you'll recall that under Franklin A. Barron, Dominica appeared to have been a thriving state of sorts. Under Edward Oliver Livland, Dominica was a thriving state. Farmers were buying their trucks. Cash, Lambi, you want to take a call? Let's take a call from Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Lambi.
Good evening.
Good evening to the entire panel. I was just turning on my volume. Yes, Mr. G.
Yes.
The guy who just finished Kenya, what is his name again?
He's the young man that is called
Paris?
He's a man called Delbert Paris.
Okay. I listened to him keenly. And Mr. G was listening to him. I said to myself, if I get to be the first caller, I'm going to tell him that Dr. Andres have the answer for all this. And that is, there is hope. You know where there is hope, Mr. G? Soon after Mr. Skerrit made his entry in the BVI, he said he was going to going to greet his supporter. That's why I didn't go to the meeting. Because when there was the intention to read the 2008 email, but when I sought some advice, the legal head told me not to go there because they might come to distract their meeting. But Mr. G, soon after he made his entrance, there's a lady in Tortola, maybe she heard me tonight, started to promise people, calling them to put on their names to give them tickets. But Mr. Skerrit making us to understand that he did not have any intention to call election. Mr. Skerrit, he had this little black boy.
He lied.
Too many lies. Let me tell you why he didn't call election. Your back is against, you know my voice, your back is against the wall. You are cornered. That's why I didn't call it. But from the time you made your entry and you went back home, tickets was already been promised to people. Let me ask you before I get off the hook. Mr. Scary, will you call the election at a later date? Thank you, Mr. G. Good night.
Thank you very much for your call. But Dr. Andre, I know that Simeon is dying to say a few things, but I want to give you an opportunity. Because you see, as he's going among us, I mean, you could see, I mean, you recall that even under Edward Oliver Leblanc, farmers paid cash for the transport. They built their homes on their farms. They were wealthy. There was generational wealth being built and distributed from generation to generation. Under Patrick John, the state was thriving. Under O.J. Serafin was there for a very short time. Under Eugenia Charles, we were exporting $180 million worth of bananas only. You know, I mean, I'm just talking about the things that are happening and were happening at the time. I mean, under Edison James is a man who took the agriculture industry from crisis to recovery, and under UWP, they was thriving. Look, all this. I think it was Delbert who spoke about all these factories and all this. Dominica had a canning factory, an orange juice canning factory, over 60 years ago, you know. And then all of us know all of the various manufacturing plants that left Dominica and that's disappeared, all the Bello and DCP and, Ross Candle Industries, I mean, Paul's Pastroni, there's a whole lot of them, right? Then there's True. And then, of course, so I hope that somebody can give our audience a little definition of what constitutes a failed state. Because we are not a thriving state. No, the only thing I see thriving is that foreign corporations and workers are getting all kind of money, leaving the country, while our own people, as Delbert is saying, are catching hell. That's what I see. I mean, you hear this man, he's retired, he's no penny, he can't get a cent. And then you have how many millions of dollars in the treasury not getting paid to local vendors, while foreign companies and workers are moving out with $200 and something million. So, I mean, it's clear, Dr. Andre, that we have to look at this carefully. Where are we now? And then what are we going to do about it?
Yes, well, okay. Well, we all know where we are. It's no secret. It's not something which is hiding in the bushes. It's hidden in plain view. The deplority that we have to deal with these days. Even those who get their pensions, quite frankly, because the pensions are so meager that it cannot give them a decent standard of living. Many of these folk have to rely on stipends from their relatives abroad, assistance, and nothing is being done to ameliorate those types of conditions. In a certain street in Goodwill, it's a tale of three houses. You have the supporters of the political directorate. They have wonderful roofs because they were fixed by the directorate. In the middle, you have one guy who's not a supporter, and he still has tarpaulin over his roof. And financially, he's perhaps in a more deprived condition than the two whose roofs were repaired, strictly on political partisanship lines. And that is the sad indictment of Dominica as we speak. Persons are deprived of jobs because of where they stand. We have economists. What about people like Vital and others? Even persons affiliated rightly or wrongly with the opposition party can't get employment. They pay taxes, mind you, but no, they've committed a mortal sin. They've committed a serious crime. So they are literally starved out of existence. And they can come back into the fold on their knees, singing songs of praises, singing how great thou art, saying publicly that I have more disagreements with my family than I have with the political directorate. betraying everything that they've said in the past.
Vic Rivera would say shame.
Somebody I know would say something worse, but I don't want to forget where I am as we speak. So this is the spectacle that we have to deal with today. Go and ask people like Blue in Bath State. Madam, you have your title now? For your house? Lucille. Go ask these people if they have title. They'll go under their coconut mattress, fiber mattress, and they'll show you what they have. But as this so-called housing revolution, thank God they are all perfume factories. Thank God that when you die within 1 hour, your title or your keys have been taken to the Almighty. And your brother has to come crying on the radio angrily. How not even a modicum of respect you are afforded. Because the only justification for you having that house is your dying allegiance to the political directorate. That is the state of affairs with these sycophants want to have in Dominica. That is why they are so angry with those of you who cling tenaciously to your values. Because you do not come groveling on bended knee, on your knees, asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness for what? For exercising your democratic right. For standing up as a man or a woman, for saying that you're a person with integrity, for saying that you believe in something, for saying that your values is worth more than a few sheets of plywood, or a brown bag, or an apartment which, quite frankly, you have to wear a mask every day, but not because of fear of getting COVID, because they are perfume manufacturing facilities or edifices. Shame. This is how low we've sunk. So we've regressed. So don't tell me about how we're better. Tell me how much worse we are today. Of course, there are those who are better. Of course, there are those who are living on the backs of others. But the majority of the folk. What about Wesley? You think that could happen in China, Mr. G. Gasso? You think black people from Nigeria could move in and take over some city or town or village in China? You really think so? You think you as a black person can go and say, I want this, I don't know how to say it in Chinese. That might be the Chinese version. The poor people of Wesley. Go and ask people like Nurse Derampel, people who have walked, who toiled in the wilderness, who cannot talk about dwelling in some mansion, a mansion with many rooms, a mansion with dark secrets, a mansion with the lucre of ill-gotten gains. She could only talk about her humble abode, which she paid for by the sweat of her brow. What I do with her husband was in grammar school when I was there, probably a year or two older. But these are not people who, quite frankly, are asking you for nothing. These are people who've worked their lives. I mean, Mr. Paris just talked about this fellow who dedicated 34 years of his life in the public service. But here's the problem. This is not just the exception. He's just one of thousands. There's a fellow from Public Works who used to be on radio asking for his gratuity. I don't know if he ever got it. There's one from Marigot called Vescott Jones. Did he get his money after he was ignominiously fired? Why? For doing his job. And that's the problem. You're overlooked because you're doing your job. Go ask many police officers. Ask Checo. Ask the others who've been vilified and victimized and ostracized and set aside because they say that the most important thing they have is their value system and their integrity. And as long as we continue to set those things aside, those values, we will have that decadence which has unfortunately taken over Dominica. Irrespective of how much pious pronouncements that certain religions make, nothing can hide the stench of corruption. But again, as I said, I salute those folks on the ground in particular who have no difficulty in airing their sense of righteousness and decency without fear and without favor, without the expectation of a brown paper bag, without the expectation of a few shoots of galvanized, without the promise of a job, without being welcomed with a fatted calf or a golden one. I don't know which one, Mr. G. Doesn't matter. I'm accustomed to back and neck, so these things have no attraction to me. So, as I said, we have to dream because I am not saying this to make anyone feel good. The future of Dominica, I'll say it as a secret because I don't want to be charged with incitement. The future of Dominica rests on the shoulders of those who are here tonight, those others who contact the radio stations and have no difficulty airing their righteous grievances, those who stand tall even while being victimized, those who are charged with inciting people to do good, those who are citing people to dream of a better Dominica, those who are citing people to take a stand, those who are citing to tell people they should not go on their knees and beg for forgiveness because they've done no wrong. There's only one Pilate in the Bible. We don't need 1,000 more. These are the people, quite frankly, who will rescue Dominica from the abyss in which it is sunk. Not some of these well-educated, some of those folks who walk around pompous, dark, tinted SUVs, who preach a gospel of self-indulgence, of greed, of self-aggrandizement. It's the hardworking people who set the example, who are just waiting for the time when they can come out and say, my allegiance is with Dominica. And that is what we have to pledge, to say our allegiance is with Dominica. What does it profit a man, Mr. G, if he loses his whole soul, but gain a few dollars more? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andre. But you know, Simeon, really, I don't know what's going on with us in Dominica. But there was a time we used to love our nurses. Nurses, Simeon, a nurse was something else in a community, you know, man. A nurse, we used to put them up on a high pedestal. We used to appreciate our nurses, our police officers, our fire officers, our teachers. But then when we're talking about the whole question of a failed state and not a thriving state, we'll all recall when the UW was in office, Simeon, they decided to do an airport and they purchased the lands and everybody got paid. And in fact, the attorney from one of the big clients said, boy, I've never seen anything like that. These fellas pay my client in full. Nobody today can say they were not paid by United Workers Party regime for acquiring the land for that airport. And yet we're hearing about a nurse, Simeon, a nurse, a retired lady who needs the money, her own property. They take it. Up to date, she can't get a cent, and this nurse has to be. Every time I come here, I have to call her name, Nurse Zyron. That lady, we need to do something about with that lady. I mean, how can that happen to a nurse, a retired nurse? Up to now, she can't get paid.
Well, if you recall, in 2005 to 2009, up till about 2014, the Labour Party had a saying, first time, never before. You remember that?
Yep.
I think that narrative suits them very well. Because first time, never before in the history of Dominica have so many people been victimized by a government. First time, never before, so many public servants are not able to see their way and pay their bills. First time, never before, has there been an elimination of the middle class in Dominica. First time, never before, we've had so much unemployment in Dominica. First time, never before, our farmers cannot see their way. First time, never before have we seen a death in the manufacturing sector. First time, never before, entrepreneurs in Dominica cannot make ends meet so they can grow and expand their product. First time, never before have Dominicans been so fearful of an administration in power whereby they are even afraid to exercise a basic democratic right of freedom of association and freedom of speech. First time, never before, have contractors and builders not been able to grow their bank accounts and build better and proper houses for their children. First time, never before have Dominicans seen such a dearth in our healthcare system. First time, never before have so many professionals just left Dominica. Our medical doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our engineers are leaving Dominica in droves. First time, never before. First time the big businesses of Dominica that we knew, that we grew up with, are struggling to make a profit. First time, never before, people can hardly grow their employment numbers. First time, never before, Dominica is not exporting any major commodity or product. First time, never before, we have containers coming into Dominica full of Chinese products and going back away empty. First time never for nurses and policemen, you look at their uniforms on them and they're washed out. They cannot even get their stipends to get new uniforms. First time never before, our schools cannot be sourced. So never before in the history of Dominica has the Labour Party mantra, first time, never before. And maybe we could add to that, thank God for. Because thank God for, Dominica has reached a state where people are not able to survive. Thank God for. Feeder roads in Dominica are almost non-existent. First time never before, and thank God for, people cannot go to the bank and save enough money and withdraw and have las ashes. Thank God for a certain person and many people why Dominica is as it is today. And that leads us, Mr. Greg. And I want to stick to the issue of governance, because I think it at the root of the success and the progress and the development of any country is good governance. Good governance is the bedrock and the foundation upon which a country expands and grows. And so gradually, right, we are beginning to see now, more than ever, the recognition of a need for good governance in Dominica. Now, one can say there are many, meanings or definitions as it pertains to good governance. But the antithesis of good governance is a failed state. And a country that does not grow is a failed state. And a failed state is as a result of lack of good governance or bad governance. So we need to understand that good governance is a process whereby public institutions, governmental institutions, conduct public affairs and manage public resources in a manner that promotes, one, the rule of law. Think about it. I'll come back to that just now. The realization of human rights. Think about that. And where you have civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. That's what human rights is. Human rights is not just the ability to associate and speak. It has to do with civil rights. What is the right of every citizen and organization and person and entity? Political rights. to participate freely and fairly in elections and governance. Economic rights, the ability to survive based on your own sweat and tears and toil. Social rights, the rights of families, of children, of youth, of widows, of orphans, and different sectors in society. And cultural rights as well. And these are some of the elements that promote good governance in all its aspects. So when we talk about good governance, okay, and which is used, it has to do with an ability, right? With that creates a certain flexibility to enable a contextual application of the term without any lack of conceptual clarity. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. Okay, and so we have to be able to think that and go further, right? Because I want Dominicans to listen at this juncture. We have to be able to define good governance as a legitimate, accountable, and effective way of obtaining and using public power and resources in the pursuit of widely accepted social common good and goals for every citizen. That's what we have to look at it as. We must look at it as it. And so the core elements of good governance are transparency. Cannot take that out of the thing. And there's no doubt that the current government in Dominica lacks transparency. We do not know how decisions are made. And even when they have to go to the House of Assembly to make major decisions, they are done in a way that undermines the very precepts and concepts and operational procedures for a legislature and a parliament, where you have a speaker who is the greatest, most anachronistic chairperson of any parliamentary system one has ever seen, one who does not promote free and fair debate, one who denies the opposition, who are duly elected by the people or appointed by the state through the president to ask the valid, legitimate, and accountable questions to our government, who will actually deny it and shut them down. You know, and one in their sense could call him a legal criminal because of the fact that he commits crimes against the duly elected people who are legitimately sitting in a legislature whose main responsibility on the opposition side is to ask the government to account to the people and to promote transparency. So in a sense, he's denying the transparency of the government, right? Another core element of good governance is integrity. The government makes decisions we don't know. They enter into agreements no one knows. No one knows who are the foreign, local, or international friends of the government of Dominica. As a matter of fact, never before in the history of Dominica have we been associated to so many international diplomatic criminals. To date, 21 years after, no one knows what is in the Memorandum of Understanding with the People's Republic of China. There are all kinds of diplomatic relations being established with governments all around the world, and no one knows what are in those diplomatic arrangements that have been established with governments around the world. No one knows. The Prime Minister maybe takes 10,000 trips a year, going all over the place. No one knows when he goes, when he leaves, where he goes, when he comes back, or what he has done on behalf of the people and the government of Dominica. There is never a reporting on any international or regional trip by the Prime Minister to the people of Dominica. Okay? So where's the integrity? Look at what happened at the groundbreaking, so-called quote unquote, of the airport. You had the president in pink, her husband in pink. You had the Speaker of the House in red, His wife was dressed in red. The wife of the former president dressed in red. We had permanent secretaries and senior public servants dressed in red. One of the words that is synonymous with the public service is the integrity of the public office and the public service. And when you have public servants paid by the state, brazenly and openly going to a public government function dressed in party colors, that lacks integrity. That tells you they will do anything on behalf of the party in power, whether or not it is procedural, whether or not it is in keeping with general and standing orders, whether or not it is in keeping with the financial store rules of the state, or whether or not it has to do with the standing rules and orders of government. They are doing things based on party affiliation or thing. Then we have to talk about another main element of good governance is the lawfulness of the state. Our policemen. And I understood the other day that there's some in almost every police department in Dominica, there are sinister operations whereby the public are in bed with certain policemen to violate certain laws across the board. There's no doubt in the matter that files of people who go to court cannot be found. We know now that the office of the Director of Public Prosecution and the Attorney General is in question. We know that magistrates are people who are full of bias. Files of criminals are disappearing from the police headquarters, right? Just look at what happened yesterday. Okay, a body that was fished out from the ocean in Dominica, anchored in cement. We have murder cases that are 18, 19, 20 years outstanding. We have guns and arms of barrels being picked up at the port, and no names, and no one knows what is happening. So what is the level of look at the level of lawlessness that happens on our streets in Dominica? Another element of good governance is sound policy. Sound policies that will drive the growth of the country in all aspects across the board. And one thing that is very troubling to my mind is this government has appointed so many quote-unquote advisors. Almost every ministry now has an advisor. And that advisor is a former government minister who has no longer run for election, but has been brought back into the government departments to serve as advisors. And none of these advisors have presented a policy paper. None of them have drafted any laws or regulations to be taken to Parliament for the improvement of any sector that they are an advisor on. None of them have organized any conferences, workshops, or anything of that nature to discuss a major element. We have now an advisor in the Ministry of Culture. I haven't heard this woman spoken about anything in culture in Dominica. The Prime Minister has 4 advisors. What are they doing? What are they doing to do anything about that? Okay, good governance has to do with participation. Okay, of the people, accountability, how the government is accountable to the people, responsiveness to the people. Look at electoral reform. Look at the call over and over and over for electoral reform. This is lack of responsiveness on the part of a government that is totally disrespecting its role in terms of good governance. And as well, most importantly, good governance, lastly, deals with the absence of corruption and wrongdoing. We cannot say in Dominica today, in 2024, that the government in power today is devoid of any corruption and wrongdoing. And this qualifies Dominica as a failed state, because where there is lack of good governance, it means, therefore, that the state has failed. And that inherently qualifies Dominica to be now defined as a failed state.
Now, here's what I want to add to that, Simeon. It seems as if that is the conclusion that many thinking people are arriving at, especially when you compare Dominica's situation today with what exists in the sister islands like St. Lucia and Grenada and St. Kitts and Barbados and, all the other islands around us, Antigua and so on. And we're backward. I mean, Simeon mentioned, in fact, Delbert, that we became independent well before many of them. And we know that many of them were way behind us at some point from an economic standpoint, but today they're past us. All right? Now, the question I have, Delbert, and I want us to address that in our final moments in this program. We all agree that Dominica deserves better.
Yep.
We all agree that Dominica needs a better way forward. We all agree that we need proper policies that is going to create an enabling environment that will allow the private sector to be what it's supposed to be, a true engine of growth. To go back to what it was under all the previous regimes, where you found all these thriving industries, right? The farming was good, the processing was good, everything, it was thriving in those days. The question is, we know that we have to do something about it. It seems to me the way you change a government in a democracy is like winning an election. Get more seats than the government, than the incumbents. That is what you do. That is how you win. Seems to me that the next step that Dominica has to take is to ensure that there is an opposition group that is able to win enough seats at an election and to form a government. Now, I'm saying this without any reservation. Why? Because that is the normal thing that happens in a democracy.
Absolutely.
You change your government from time to time. That is what happens in Antigua, it happens in St. Lucia, it happens in Barbados, it happens in St. Kitts. You change your government. And why? Because you know that when any group of people have too much power, they get corrupt. And we know that absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I think it is time, and Dominica deserves a new regime of people. Right? I made a description of all those people. I even said, in fact, that some folks like yourself and Simeon and Andy and so on are fitting the bill. There are a number of people. I think if you, as a young person who's moving around in the communities, who knows a lot of you, I'm sure if you look around and you at Dominicans at home and abroad, I'm pretty sure you can find 21 people. 21 dynamic young people who could represent from different communities, could represent their communities in a parliament and do an extremely good job because they have what it takes to do that.
Absolutely.
It seems to me, Delbert, that is the next move. We understand all of the arguments. We understand what is a failed state. We understand what is happening. We understand the problem people are facing. I mean, look at our nurse, Darren. Why should she be facing that problem? Why should somebody who was retired after 30-something years be having a problem in collecting a pension? So it's got to a point where now the people's lives are being affected in a very negative way. A change must come. It seems to me now that we have to rely on the political parties and the opposition groups to organize themselves in something and to get with the program, make themselves visible, have the candidates, have a program, raise money, present themselves to the people to form the next government. I think Dominica is ready for that now.
But listen, I actually agree. I actually agree with you on all fronts, actually, that Dominica has enough people, good people, skilled people, and the rest of the adjective that you used to describe the capable people with the capacity to take Dominica forward, with the capacity to execute and to develop good governance systems, all of what Simeon spoke about earlier on, that will help to propel this country forward. We have no shortage of capable people where that is concerned. In terms of the opposition forces organizing, that is the system, like you mentioned earlier, that is the system that we operate in. That is the system that we live in. We live in a democratic system, and it requires political parties, it requires structure, it requires movement, it requires leadership, it requires vision, direction, planning, budgeting, all of those things, preparing yourself to actually govern. And you have to govern yourselves while you're outside of government, and then prepare yourself to govern a country when you win the elections. I think that is a challenge that we have now, and I think that we are well positioned to do it. there needs to be some regulations within the system. I know you would have noticed a little bit of upheaval that people were getting nervous about in recent times, thinking that an election might be called soon. It might be another snap election. I think those things have to stop. I think we need to regularize our system and ensure that we put our country on a stable footing where we don't operate like if it's our father's backyard and we can do whatever we want, and then we can start to curse our own people on a political platform and telling people how much they're afraid and in what parts of their body they are afraid. I think we need to regularize those things. But Mr. G, one of the things that we have to do, there needs to be some truth and reconciliation done. I wrote a piece, it's very pointed, and I'm not sure that I want to read it on air, but I'll send you a copy of it. But it talks about a certain level of truth and reconciliation that should be done with our seniors and our young people. Because, Mr. G, what has happened is that for the last 24 years, a lot of seniors and a lot of our elders have sat by and watched this thing happen. Some of who participated and some who didn't say anything at all. And now the same group of people are requiring young people to do something about the monster that we allowed to grow. The monster, that the beast that is now too big for our seniors to kill, they're asking our young people to kill it. And we do have the tools. Our seniors didn't provide us with the tools, and they sat there and watched this beast morph into an animal that is literally stealing the future of Dominica's young people. And there needs to be some truth and reconciliation with that, where that is concerned. I think there's a debt that is owed to Dominica's young people. We have some apologizing to do. We have some reconciliation to do where it comes to our young people, because we shortchange them. We shortchange them. And now what happens very often, we hear that young people are castigated and they're called all manner of insulting names, and they're told how useless they are and how worthless they are, and how they're not standing up for themselves and they don't believe in nothing. And we plan for them, and we plan around them, and we talk at them, but not enough people are talking with young people. Not enough people are listening to young people. Not enough people are hearing exactly where they are. And I have to plug this in here. I have to give credit to our young people. There are a lot of them who are still pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. They are still doing remarkable things. I know all of us would pretend that not pretend, but all of us would have some issues with our nasty business. I'm artists and our buoy artists. But if you look at what they're doing outside of Dominica, they have created a niche for themselves. They are doing well, and there are some of those that are not even involved in nasty business, but it's still our genre, and they're still doing well. Let's go past the music industry. We have those young people inside and outside of Dominica that are doing remarkably well academically. We still have a number of young people in Dominica who are doing remarkably well when it comes to entrepreneurship and being innovative and finding ways to literally themselves create niches for themselves to survive and to succeed and to do things with passion and love. And we have to give credit to that. But what we also need to do is, if we want to plan a future that we are not going to see, we're not going to be there, Mr. G. And I may be younger than all of you here on the panel tonight. You're not going to be there. And that's just the reality of it. So if you want to plan a future that you're not going to see, you have to involve the people that you think are going to be there. Ask them what they want. Ask them what type of life they want to live, and give them the resources. Ask them how you can help them. And then when they've told you what they want, by all means, give them some guidance. By all means, hold their hand, but move out of their way and let young people take their future in their own hands. Just like how Dominica wanted independence and took it. We have to give our young people a certain level of personal autonomy that they can be able to build and craft and chart their own future for themselves. And that is when, Mr. G, you start seeing our young people stepping up and stepping out, because they have the capacity, They have the capacity. Look at what they do with nothing. They are so creative. Look at them on TikTok. Look at them on social media. Do you know the amount of money young people make from social media, Mr. G? It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. From the comfort of their homes, they can do those things. If we find a way to tap into that, if we find a way to level with our young people, reconcile with them, own up to the mistakes that we made in the past, and give them the resources, the knowledge, and we empower them with information and finance, and move out of the way, stop blocking traffic, and allow our young people to develop their own personal autonomy. And most of all, most importantly, pray for them. Pray for them. Pray that they will have the sort of courage and the wisdom to do better, to do a better job than we did, so that they don't inherit the life that we currently have. I think we'll have a better Dominica in the not too distant future. I think we will reap some better fruit in the next 25 years when this group of young people have received from their elders and their seniors the type of empowerment and wisdom and guidance and leadership that will put them on a platform to chart their own future. That is the way forward, Mr. G. It's not ageism at all. It is not ageism at all. It's a reality that if we're talking about a future that we are not going to see, we need to involve the people we expect to be there and empower them to do a better job than we did. And I think that is one of the things that will get Dominica out of the rut that we're in. Mr. G, we absolutely have hope. Like Dr. Andre said early on, we have hope. It's in our young people.
I hear you, and I see you, Delbert, and I'm with you on what you're saying. Basically, I think there are a couple of generations that they are the bridge between the old and the new and what's coming, right?
Yep.
So they've seen the better days, they've seen the better states, they've seen the better government, they've seen the better organization, they've seen the better culture, the better way of life, they've seen the prosperity that they enjoyed. They know what is going on now, and they know it is not better than what was there before. And they can see where it's trending going forward. So I think you're right. They need to help the young people to create that, that space so that they can take over and move the thing forward. They need some hand holding there. But one of the things that I wanted to say is that there isn't much time, because in our democracy, you have elections. And all the chatter I'm hearing tells me there might be one soon, because some people are panicking. Why? And you can see, look, this current regime, for example, is by its own admission indicating that it has failed. How is it doing that? How can you be calling election every couple of years and just resetting and changing people? That means you say these people not good. I choose them and I put them there, but they didn't do well, so I have to go back and take them out again. In other words, if your thing is succeeding, why are you going to change something that's working? You're not going to take out something that is working. Somebody said, "Tiwe boy, you made a pie." You're not going to do that. I mean, the point is, if something is working, you keep it going. But if you keep changing, it means that you're admitting that. But guess what? The common factor that remains, if you look at this regime, there is only one person in there that was there 24 years ago as an elected official. All the rest are gone. What is the problem? Is it changing these people, or is it removing that person and trying something else, somebody else? What do you think? Because here's the thing. If you keep doing the same thing the same way every time, you're not going to get a different result. And the result we're getting right now is terrible.
Yeah.
Businesses are leaving the country, or people can't get raises. And I mean, people are so dissatisfied with what's going on. It is terrible. All right? It is. Very, very bad. So the point I'm making, Dr. Andre, and I hope you can maybe put a little word on that for us. It seems to me there is the urgency of now. Something needs to happen. And every time I listen to the radio, I hear people calling about little things. I'm saying, but how important are those little things they're calling about among themselves? The big picture is you need to remove the elephant in the room, the big stone in the road. Get together, everybody, and do what needs to be done. I mean, this country is bigger than all of us. I mean, all of us have our little thing we want, but this country as a whole, it is bigger than all of us. And so we have to sometimes eat a little humble pie and say, okay, let's try our ways back on Uban and get the job done. So I'm saying, Dr. Andre, It is time for the opposition forces get together in a serious way, do this thing and get a new regime in place. Otherwise, this country is doomed.
And how many times do you have to say this thing? How many times that persons, whether on radio, whether on this program, whether on Lofty's program, whether on other programs, do they have to preach the same gospel from the same book? How many times? This is not rocket science. This is not some complicated chemical or mathematical formula to be unraveled. The truth shall set you free. How much more suffering do we need to see? How many cries of anguish do we need to hear? How many more examples of gross deprivation, victimization, exploitation do we need to learn about? No pa muntu then. Huh? You have foreigners walking out of Dominica. They came brokes. They're walking out with $30 million and their mouths are shut up just so they don't disclose the secrets that they have. You have members of the old administration writing emails about disclosing what's happening in the party, and all of a sudden they go silent. We have persons being deprived medical attention, persons who are in the bowel of the beast, and all of a sudden they're singing from the same hymn book. What do you gain? Don't you have children? Don't you have family members? Don't you have villagers? Don't you have persons who used to look up to you? How many houses do you have? Do you want to have? What have you worked for? Are you an Egyptian that you will chuck everything in your coffin when the trumpet calls, the sounds? No. There comes a time when a man or a woman has to stand up and say enough is enough. There comes a time when those values that you have been nurtured on will rise to the fore. There comes a time when you have to slay the dragon of greed, of selfishness, of exploitation, of merciless taking advantage of your lesser brethren. There comes a time when you have to say, whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. There comes a time when you have to read that section in the Bible where you read about the father curing lepers instead of telling you, all you get away from me. There comes a time when you have to read the parable of David. David, where was David again? Guys, I can't remember. Wasn't he in the fighting what? Goliath or in the lion's den? And what? Daniel was in the lion's den. And you would think that lion had false teeth, but because he couldn't destroy Daniel at all. You have to derive and you have to summon that inner strength. The strength you may not even think you have. You don't have any muscles. Look at me. I can hardly lift up 5 pounds of marshmallow. But I have to rely on a much deeper instinctual, spiritual strength to confront this existential threat that is ruining Dominica in so many different ways. Where are the banks which were in Dominica, Mr. G? You're a financial man. You think they wanted to run back into the cold? What made them leave? Because they could see some pestilence which is going to besiege Dominica? Because of a demon called money laundering, Mr. G. It is eating the very innards of Dominica. They can run, they can't hide. They will give you every example why this project has stopped, why this hotel has stopped, while the hotel in wherever it is around Salisbury, there's nothing happening there. Why other projects have just stopped. But we know the reason. And Dominicans are paying the price for these things. Because internationally, we've garnered a reputation of ill repute. A house of dark secrets. a house of iniquity. And it's the man on the street, the man on the ground who's paying the price. Not these sycophants who's looking for a free ticket to come to vote and tell you about their rights. You don't care a damn. Whether they're in the VIs or they're in Miami, their justification is the same. How can I line my pockets and justify it in the name of freedom? And while they pitch a gospel of freedom, those they're dung pressing on the ground are suffering more and more and more because the pie is getting smaller. The cost of living is getting higher. There's no escape clause. There's no social assistance. Can you imagine, Mr. G. Gasson? During COVID, the World Health Organization, I advise someone to correct me if I'm wrong, gave the authorities $30 million, not 30 pieces of silver, $30 million to provide relief to Dominicans on the ground. And it's only if you wore the badge, the red badge of iniquity, that you got any help. Those who did not, or those who identified as Samaritans, did not get anything. Nothing. And those who were stay abroad, talking their errant nonsense, they were busy holding out their hands to get their checks from the US government or from the European government or from Antigua or from every single island in the Eastern Caribbean. While they were demonizing Dominican on the ground, they were getting their checks of assistance, COVID assistance, Gasson, to alleviate their own difficulties. How insensitive can you be? Don't you have a conscience? Don't you have any? Well, there are no more calabash trees in Dominica because these folks have taken all the guts out of them. Don't you have any feelings for your prayer? The religious that you grow up, doesn't that mean anything in your lives? Whether you listen to the gospel in Latin or you listen to the English, doesn't it resonate in some fashion within your bosom? How can you turn the other way when people are being victimized so systematically? How can you pretend it doesn't exist? How can you preach a gospel of redemption and brotherhood when you are the main buttresses and apologists for that type of arrogance and greed and selfishness and victimization in governance? Where is thy conscience? You talk about your house has many, your house has many rooms. Who are in those rooms? The poor? Those who are deprived? Those who are depressed? Those who are asking for assistance? Those who are sick? Are these the people that you have in your house? Or is it the Monfareds that is in your house? The Ali, Sakinoi, Ali something, the Nigerian lady. Huh? These are the folks that occupy the rooms in your house, not the poor, not the persons who are just trying to earn a living. You are too big for these people. Not only are you ignoring them, but you're taking away. I think as Mr. Paris talked about generational wealth. How can you take away people's lands? What are they going to leave for their children? What are they going to leave for their families? What are they going to use to grow crops, to sell to hucksters, or to sell in the market, or to sell to villagers? Huh? What are you doing for these folk? This is governance that we should be talking about. When we're talking about a better living, this is what we should be talking about. The index of poverty in your own country, and you're tolerating this. Not only are you tolerating this, you're giving away the resources of your country to a foreigner who don't give a damn about Dominica. If you have some of these fellas with 1 degree, 2 degrees, they get a job they don't deserve. And you would think, Mr. G, they can walk on water. It's only Dominicans that can redeem Dominica. It's only Dominicans who can sing redemption song. You know that song of Bob Marley? Simeon has a nice voice. Old pirates, dog, or Robbie, whatever it is. I don't know if it's Alcolado that they were robbed with, but they were robbed of something. And I'm talking about robbing. It's only people like Paris who are the future of Dominica, Mr. Paris, I should say, who hold the future of Dominica in their hands because they sing from a different hymn book. And we have to get Dominica singing from that hymn book. And we should adopt a fearless posture when we stand firm and we sing the strength of our voices, even though some of us, including myself, can't sing. But we can all have our little gifts. We can all contribute to making Dominica a better place, not just for ourselves, but our children. I'm abroad. I had to leave abroad because when I applied for a scholarship to study law, they told me, Gaston, we're not giving. But the next year they give it to somebody full scholarship. And without blowing my horns, I did much, much better than that person would ever have done in his life. But I said I will do what I have to do because I had confidence that the sweat of my brow will sustain me just as it has over the last 40 years. And I hope it will continue to sustain me. And I hope I will have the strength to go to Pottersville and buy some loaves of bread from my favorite baker and feel quite contented without being welcomed with a fatted calf.
Yeah, well, they still make jackawi in Dominica. You can get some of that and little
Mr. G, you have to respect people's secrets. Not because I told you something in private that you have to go on radio and say, Andre is fisting on jackawi.
No, man, it's not. It's only Simeon and Delbert as here. Nobody else here. That's what we say here. No, but Simeon, we're coming to the point now where we have to wind down. The time always comes where we have to do that reluctantly sometimes. But I think we made some points here. I think one of the clear points that I think was established that we have a failed states. We have a semblance of a failed states. There's no doubt about it. In fact, the regime itself is acknowledging that by taking young people, some of them very decent young people who have some qualification and who would probably be developed into making meaningful contributions. But really, they put in a position in a ministry and they're not being given a chance to actually even do the work. Somebody else is running their ministry for them. They're not even being allowed to talk on behalf of their own ministry. I mean, so the point is, there's one common denominator there is that person who's been there throughout and has not been removed. Democracy requires that you change your government from time to time to prevent absolute corruption. Simeon, your closing remarks on some of what we discussed here tonight?
Okay. Well, of course, I don't think this topic. I must say this topic is not exhaustive, and I'm hoping that having started this discussion, we will be able to continue it so that we will be able to bring some sober thoughts to the people of Dominica. I think people have been drunken too much on rum and siwo and good looks and the camouflage of things being bright for too long. I think we have to consciously, Mr. Gregoire, regularly bring to the people of Dominica their plight where they are now. So that is the only way I think that will answer your question, to get rid of that, as Tony Estefan said in 2000. Now we have an albatross around our neck, okay? And that albatross has been stifling the growth and the development of the people of Dominica and the expansion of the country as a whole for too long. And so we must keep that issue on the burner. And that issue is to ask that pivotal question, okay, which I think is the hub upon which every action is going to rotate. And that is, are Dominicans better off today than they were 20 years ago? And they need to answer that question, because in this state of flux that we are in now, between the past and the future, if they do not answer this question now, they will not be able to take decisive action to make sure that the future is brighter. The people, the elderly, those who knew Dominica 20 years ago, must be able to shed some light on the reality of where Dominica is today, so that the young men who are now 25 and 30 years, who were 5 years old 20 years ago, and who today cannot confidently go to the bank and take a loan to build a house, to buy a piece of land, so that they can have a family and provide security, will open their eyes, so that the young women of Dominica today who recognize that they are really advancing nowhere in life will become aware of how life can have been better. It is a very grievous situation when we have thousands of young people in Dominica today who have been born or grew up under this current government and with no hope. The word is hope, but not only no hope, with no chance of ensuring that their future is brighter than it is now. Are these young men going to wait another 25 years until they reach 50 years for them to say, no, enough is enough? We must join the fight. We have to take action now. We must be on the side of those who want to liberate us. We must not sit down on the street corners. We need to get up from sitting down and join the fight, join the march, join the action, and say enough is enough. That we should not be given breadcrumbs on the side of the road, because if they do not own the action now, they will become old and they'll never be able to realize their full humanity or realize their absolute manhood. Okay? And so in saying so, just in closing, I think we need to ensure that on the next phase of the development of Dominica, that we move away from that failed state and that failed government that we have into the definitions of good governance. And there are 8 elements to it. The first one, to be more participatory, okay, where people are given a greater opportunity for active involvement in the developmental process. Secondly, a country that is consistent with the rule of law, right? Where people feel confident that the rule of law is exercised through the state, and the guided standards that embody social values is what takes precedence in the rule of law in Dominica. That we need a government that is transparent to people, right? That's good governance. That's what would remove us. A government that's transparent, who are accountable to the people. A government that is responsive to the needs of people, to the concerns of people, to the cries of people, and to the due authorities that exist in Dominica. A government that is consensus oriented, not a one-man dictator directing and running everything in a country. And 6, a government that is equitable and inclusive, and that a government that recognizes Dominica is for everybody and not for one set of people. A government that is efficient and effective. And lastly, a government that is accountable. Okay? These are the definitions of the United Nations as established in 2008 of what good governance is, the principles of good governance. And I'm hoping that we can continue this discussion and begin to focus on the key sectors of the population that we need to awaken, that we need to give a good dose of coffee so that they can be removed from their stupor and their gaze on this false messianic reality that they are in, and get out of that ominous situation that have captivated them for so long.
Here's what I'm thinking, Simeon. It might be useful for us here to consider, maybe trying to come back here next week, Tuesday, and to deal with exactly that, the way forward. What it is we need to do go forward. We have agreed that we're in a bad situation here right now, and we need to get out of it for our own preservation and for the preservation of future generations. So I think we need to come back here and talk about the way forward. Exactly some of the terms that you're talking about and all of the things that Delbert has talked about and Dr. Andre. I think we should come back. But Delbert, I wanted to give you your final opportunity to make your sort of closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. G. Very quickly, 2 minutes. I learned this from my father. My father said, if you don't give people hope, if whatever you're gonna say doesn't give people hope, then you should be quiet. I was asked the question recently, what I think it's going to take to get Dominica back on its feet, or to get Dominica to a place where we can start to see the light of day. And I said, my response was that it's going to take a fight. It's going to take a fight. It's going to take a revolution. And it does not necessarily mean anything violent. As a matter of fact, I didn't mean anything violent by fight. But one of the things we have to fight against, Mr. G, and I've started saying this because I truly believe it. It's not against a man, but it is against an idea. It is against the idea that we as Dominicans, we as a country, we as sovereign people, we as God-fearing people, that we do not deserve better. That is the idea that has been forced upon us and our children for the last 25 years. That whatever we're getting, even if it's scraps, even if it's fumes, that is good enough and it could be worse. We have to fight against that idea. We have to fight against people who try to force us to believe that we do not deserve better, because we do. We are children of God and we deserve better. With all these resources that we have around us and all the power that we have within us, we deserve to live a fulfilling, prosperous life where we thrive in the country of our birth, where we thrive on our children, and we can be hopeful about the future. Mr. G is going to take a fight. It's going to take an army of people that believe we deserve more. The army of people, it is not going to consist of frontline soldiers alone. There's a notion too that it's for one set. It's for Mr. G, and it's for Dr. Andre, and it's for people like Simeon. They know all the things, and let them go in front, put them up front, and let them take all the criticism for it. No. In the army of resistance, it's going to take every one of us. There's a place for people in finance and strategists and lobbyists and lawyers and doctors and truck drivers and husbands and wives and children and reverends too. We'll take some of those. Mr. G, we even have space for crooks and internet trolls. Jesus had 12 disciples, at least 3 of them was crook. So we'll take those too. Because you see, Mr. G, it's not about them and us. That's another idea that we have to fight against. It's not about them and us. There's no difference between Simeon and myself and Lambie in the studio and Sherwin you never see, but he's always there working. There's no difference between us. The fight is for all of us. Every one of us have a space in the fight for democracy. Every one of us have a space in the fight for justice, for peace, for real change, for good governance. For our young people, for our senior citizens, our farmers, our teachers, and our scholars. Every one of us have a space in that fight to help save our little Dominica. And Mr. G, when we have won that war together, we will select the best of us to continue to lead the rest of us. We will bring back class to the people of Dominica. We will bring back integrity. We bring back ethics. We release the private sector from the bondage and we will set the middle class free. We will liberate the legal system so that it can function as it is supposed to. And we will restore law and order to this blessed land of ours. Mr. G, once again, Dominica will be the best place to live, to work, to invest, to raise children, to enjoy life. And once again, we will truly embody what it means to be independent. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm with you on that, Delbert. I think that is where we need to go. This is the goal. And Dominica has to be. What else do you have? You have Dominica. That's all you have. I mean, you could be living somewhere temporarily, yes, but I mean, Jamaicans have Jamaica, Dominicans have Dominica. That's what it is. Dr. Andre, your closing remarks, because clearly it's indicated that we might need to come back here next week and talk about where we go forward from here. But I'm hoping that if we do that, by the time we come back, we can get a report that already we've understood or we understand that all the opposition forces have met and that they're coming up with something that they can say to everybody. Listen, maybe one of them might call us and say, listen, fellas, we're doing this, you all talked about it last week. We're on it, and here's where we're going. And we're going, as Delbert says, then what we're going to do, we're going to agree to do this thing together, all of us in it together, and we're going to make sure that we choose the best of us to lead the rest of us, and let's not fight and quarrel over that. Dr. Andrew, your final words?
Yeah, let me say good evening. Let me thank you, Mr. G. Let me congratulate Mr. Paris and Mr. Joseph for their sterling contributions to the cause of righteousness. Undeterred by any sense of fear of recrimination, unfazed by any type of criticism, unfazed by any prospect of victimization. They are both singing a song of redemption. And in that vein, as they spoke, I was reminded of a few lines in Bob Marley's song, oh, let Jah Moon come shining into our lives again. Mr. Joseph gave 4 components or factors of governance. There's one which he didn't mention. It is governance involved a people armed by a sort of righteousness, armed by an armor of knowledge, armed by a sense of confidence, protected by a desire to protect their future, to protect their children, to protect their livelihood, motivated and animated by the biblical teachings, spurred on by the examples on the parables that speak to us so eloquently, whether it's the parable of the sower, whether it's the parable of overcoming overwhelming odds, whether it's the parable relating to sacrifice, whether it's those teachings that tell us, quite frankly, that you should thirst for righteousness rather than earthly or worldly things. So let us hope that we and our leaders will shed, if they have to be baptized in the waters of the Layu River, that they should shed all kinds of inhibitions, all kinds of animosities, all kinds of hang-ups, and embrace each other, because there's only one cause that is paramount in this fight. It is the cause of Dominica, not the cause of seeking to feather your own nests, not the cause of seeking revenge against those who don't support you, not the cause of building magnificent edifices which go right up to heaven, not the cause of feathering your own nests, but the cause of taking care and giving hope to your own brother, irrespective of his or her political affiliation or who he or she is aligned to. The fact of the matter is, what is the saying? Simeon may know it, he is a much more religious man than I am, that the fight is not for flesh and blood. It is for the kingdom of heaven, the temporal heaven, where we can live like brothers and sisters and we can prosper together. We can live with each other as opposed to on each other. And this is the message of redemption that we must preach. And even those who try to vilify us, we can tell them through our actions, you will not stop me. I don't care what you say. And I will make sure that even as you prosper materially, you will still have that anger and that bitterness and that enrage in your system, because no one prospers on ill-gotten gains. You prosper on the sweat of your brow. You prosper on what you've worked hard for with your own hands. You prosper based on the long hours you spend at university or college, working hard to get a little degree, to advance yourself, armed by the belief that somehow God has given you self-rewarding and fulfilling gifts and abilities, and you have to make use of those. And your success is not basically how many degrees you've achieved. Your success is the ability to which you leave that door open, the same door you entered into the portals of privilege, the extent to which you leave that door open for others less fortunate to follow into your footsteps. That is this redemptive spirit that we crave for, and we should make no apologies for it. And so, with these words, I embrace what my colleagues have said. They've been very eloquent this evening. Somebody once told me in the market, Mr. G, and I listened to the wisdom of the person on the street. You can't get black pudding from a slice of master bread, but you can get anything and everything from the sweat of your brow. So I thank your listeners, and I bid each of everyone good night, and I will go and enjoy my little back and neck dinner. So thank you all.
Yes, and really and truly, this is all we can ask for in life, Dr. Andre. I mean, these young people, they have all the talents that we're talking about. All they're looking for is an opportunity to be able to realize their dreams, to be able to self-actualize. That's all they're asking for. They're willing to work hard and put in the hard work and you know, tie their waist and do what they have to do. So I want to thank you all of you all for being here tonight and the magnificent contributions that you've made. And we'll try to be here next Tuesday, and certainly we don't want to go back over all of the. We have come to some conclusions that I think that affirm Dominica is not doing well. Dominica needs to do better, and Dominica's democracy is in tatters because we have not been changing our government frequently enough, as is required in normal democracies. We need to do something about that. God did not ordain that only one person or one group of people. You know, human beings, we're all equal. Everybody has equal abilities. So, I mean, we need to be out there and give everybody a chance to do what they can do best. As Delbert says, the best of us should lead the rest of us. And every now and then we have to purge what we have, put something new that is going to work, especially for the generations to come. And so I hope that we can come here next week and talk about that going forward, that enabling environment that is going to help these young people, conducive to helping them realize their dreams and to build their country. So, gentlemen, I want to say good night to everybody. Good night, Lambi. Good night, Sherwin, Simeon, and Delbert. And Irving, Andy was not able to join us, but he did tell me that he will join us next week if necessary. So, I mean, I want to say good night to everybody. Good night to all our wonderful listeners who are still with us on Facebook. Appreciate you. We really made a mistake in not trying to read some of your comments out there, but you had some wonderful comments, which are very good. I'm so thankful that you're still with us throughout. Join us again next Tuesday for another Global View on Q program. So, good night, everybody. Take care and all the best. Take care, Delbert. Take care, Simeon. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Good night. Good night. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right. See you guys next week.
Okay, good.
Oh,